A search warrant application unsealed on Wednesday revealed closer links than previously known between President Donald Trump's former campaign manager Paul Manafort and a Russian oligarch with close ties to the Kremlin. In an affidavit attached to the July 2017 application, an FBI agent said he had reviewed tax returns for a company controlled by Manafort and his wife that showed a $10 million loan from a Russian lender identified as Oleg Deripaska. The application to search Manafort's Virginia apartment was granted, providing key evidence for special counsel Robert Mueller's indictments of Manafort as part of his investigation into Russia's alleged meddling in the 2016 presidential campaign. Mueller has been investigating the financial links between Manafort and Deripaska, a metals magnate who is known to be close to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Deripaska was among the Russian oligarchs sanctioned by the United States in April. Mueller also has indicted Konstantin Kilimnik, a political operative who sometimes served as an intermediary between Manafort and Deripaska. In court filings, Mueller's prosecutors have said Kilimnik has ties to Russian spy agencies, which Kilimnik denies. The affidavit unsealed on Wednesday also disclosed that Deripaska had financially backed Manafort's consulting work in Ukraine when it started in 2005-2006, citing information from a source whose name was redacted, a sign that a former Manafort associate may have cooperated with the investigation. On Tuesday, a federal judge in Virginia dealt a blow to Manafort by rejecting a motion to dismiss the case on the argument Mueller did not have the mandate to prosecute him. Manafort, who was Trump's campaign manager during part of his 2016 presidential campaign, has been indicted in Washington and Virginia on charges ranging from conspiring to launder money, bank and tax fraud, and failing to register as a foreign agent for the pro-Russia Ukraine government. Manafort has pleaded not guilty. His Virginia trial starts in July, and his Washington trial is scheduled for September. The search warrant application also confirmed that Mueller has been investigating Manafort's role in a June 9, 2016, meeting that he attended at the Trump Tower in New York between Donald Trump Jr. and a Russian lawyer and self-professed Kremlin informant who purportedly was carrying damaging information on Hillary Clinton, the Democratic nominee for president. The FBI sought communications, records, documents and other files involving any of the attendees of the June 9, 2016, meeting at Trump Tower, as well as Aras and Emina Galarov, said the application, which misspelled the first name of Emina Galarov. Aras Galarov is a Russian oligarch close to Putin who joined the elder Trump in staging the 2013 Miss Universe contest in Moscow. His son, Emin, is a popular singer.
Tax evasion, bank fraud, hiding foreign bank accounts. Let's go to CNN's Jessica Schneider. She's outside the courthouse in Alexandria, Virginia. So what is the latest, Jessica?
Wolf, the jury has been back in that deliberation room for just more than an hour now. They went in just before noon, and all of this upon the judge's instruction that they go back into the jury room and they continue their deliberations on that one count that they indicate they've had trouble reaching unanimous verdict on. So right now the jury is back in the deliberation room. You know, it indicates that perhaps this jury has come to a conclusion, has reached a decision on those other 17 counts, and there's one count they're having trouble with. It's interesting, this judge gave what's called in this circuit a Sawyer's charge to the jury. It's also commonly known as an Allen charge, and it basically presses the jury to go back into the deliberation room and reconsider things, talk things over again. He put things very simply for the jury. He said, you should not surrender your honest conviction simply to reach a verdict. But then he talked to them for 5 minutes, imploring them to continue working together. He said that it is your duty to agree upon a verdict if you can do so without violating your individual inclinations. He then encouraged the jury to continue working together. He said, give deference to each other, listen to each other's arguments. So possibly for the past hour plus, that's exactly what this jury has been doing. There's no indication as to how long they might take, whether or not they might end up reaching a unanimous decision on this one additional count that they're having trouble with. But as for the defense team, Wolf, they walked out of the court after this instruction was given to the jury. The defense team is still putting on an air of positivity, saying that all of this has been good for Paul Manafort. But of course, it's only the jury that knows, and perhaps we will know soon too. Perhaps we'll wait for a verdict. We'll see if it comes soon. Wolf?
6 men and 6 women on that jury. We should know presumably fairly soon. We'll stay in very close touch with you, Jessica. Arshan, what do you think? What does this say to you that the jury asked the judge for a question? What if they can only reach agreement on 17 of the 18 counts, but one they can't reach a unanimous 12-person decision on?
If I were the prosecutor, I would be happy about that note, because I think it's more likely that they've reached a decision to want to convict on the other counts as opposed to acquit, and that's why they're very conscientiously working over this last count. And it certainly says they're having some dissension about that last count, but I would not be happy if I was the defense right now, but I would be quietly confident if I was the prosecutor.
Because, Laura, we did check with the federal rules of criminal procedure, and you know this by heart. I didn't know it by heart. And I'll read to you one sentence from multiple counts. If the jury cannot agree on all counts as to any defendant, the jury may return a verdict on those counts on which it has agreed.
You can render a partial verdict. Now, of course, the judge was essentially saying teamwork makes the dream work. Continue to try to get all of the counts resolved, but you can, in fact, give them a partial verdict, and that's okay to do so. What happens if they are to return maybe 17 of the 18 or 3 of the 18 or 1 of the 18? What they can do is the prosecution, if they have a conviction or an acquittal either way, can say, we will decide whether to retry on that particular ground, on that particular charge alone. Now, if you have a conviction on 17 of 18 counts, you don't necessarily want to have that particular new trial on these. Remember, this is obviously a 2-week trial, but you can do a partial verdict, and this jury is well aware of that now.
How do you see it?
So I actually have 2 observations about this, Wolf. The first one is I'm a little bit surprised that Judge Ellis went right to an anti-deadlock instruction, what we call an Allen charge or a Sawyer's charge, because the jury didn't announce that they were deadlocked. And usually that is when a judge opts to give an anti-deadlock instruction. They just asked the question, what happens if we can't reach unanimous verdicts on one of the 18 counts? I've had this exact note in criminal trials, and what I think, we can't say for certain, but what I think is going on in their minds is they don't necessarily know that if they deadlock on one, even if they've reached verdicts on the other 17, they might believe the whole case ends up as a hung jury, which, as Laura said, is not the case. They can return a partial verdict. Here's what I predict. If they send out another note saying we're still struggling with one, the judge at that point will probably ask, have you reached unanimous verdicts on any counts? And if so, let's announce them in open court.
That would be a big, big deal. One of the other rules in the federal rules of criminal procedure is if the jury cannot agree on a verdict on one or more counts, the court may declare a mistrial on those counts. The government may retry any defendant on any count on which the jury could not agree. So there is that option. But if, in fact, they get a conviction, we don't know if they will, Rachel, if they get a conviction on 17 of the 18 counts, that's a pretty big deal for the special counsel.
Yeah, big victory for special counsel Robert Mueller. This is obviously the first trial of this investigation, and if they are victorious, that's going to obviously bolster the public view of what they're doing from here on out. I think it's interesting that you mentioned prosecutors should be happy about this, because my colleague was talking to Kevin Downing, who is the lawyer for Manafort, and he was saying that they believe it's a good sign for Manafort that the jury hasn't been able to decide. Maybe that was before they found out it was just one count that they were deliberating on, but again, just to show we don't know what they're thinking at this point.
Actually, Kevin Downing tried something very interesting. He asked for the new verdict form to put the option of hung jury by every single count, trying to suggest they should revisit that question. So that's an interesting strategy attempt by him. And I think, to Glenn's point, the judge giving this sort of what they call a dynamite charge now also creates some possible appellate issues, because they had not announced they were deadlocked. And later on, if there's a conviction, Manafort's team could argue you put too much pressure on them at this point.
Seek a retrial under those circumstances. All right, well, it looks like they're getting closer and closer. This is day 4 of their deliberations. We will, of course, stand by for that verdict. Guys, thanks very, very much. Don't go too far away, because there's more breaking news we're following. The president's longtime fixer and lawyer now in talks for a plea deal with federal prosecutors. What Michael Cohen's legal jeopardy means for the president of the United States. Plus, Microsoft thwarts a cyber attack by Russian hackers targeting critics of Moscow. who they targeted, how they legal analyst in their statement, they said due to the status of its investigation, the special counsel's office does not believe that this matter is ready to be scheduled for a sentencing hearing at this time. Clearly, they want to do more questioning of Flynn. They're hoping to get more information.
They do indeed. They want to keep him on that hook. And notice the direct contrast between Michael Flynn and George Papadopoulos, both who have pled guilty. Mueller recommended sentencing already for Papadopoulos for his betrayal they perceived after he struck a plea deal for not being a cooperative witness, for not giving information they really needed. Michael Flynn, in contrast, is somebody who I think pled guilty even before George Papadopoulos, ideally. And you had this notion of, well, we want him to still be there. So the delay of sentencing tells you that they have a need for this person's information still, and that he is a fruitful cooperator, not just giving information or a blowhard in different ways. He is somebody who is actually still useful. And once he is no longer useful, they will then ask for sentencing.
They told the court they'll give, in 30 days, they'll give him another update when there could be sentencing of the president's fired national security advisor, Michael Flynn.
And of course, 30 days from now is around the window of time that Mueller's probe would have to end if the DOJ rules would say you can't interfere with an election. The timing is important.
Very important indeed. No sentencing for Michael Flynn, at least not yet.